Okay, so this one I wanted to talk about spiritual freedom and what kind of work that means for us. You're probably all familiar with the Japanese folktale, which is meant to teach children about the dangers of selfishness. It's cutting off my head. Thank you. One day, a very wicked man died. This is the folktale. One day, a very wicked man died and went to hell. Buddha looked over the edge. Buddha is a great, big, gigantic figure, and the hell is a very small figure. And so all the little people in hell are tiny little figures. So Buddha looked over the edge of hell and he thought, this man has done wicked deeds his whole life, but he saved one little spider's life. So I will let down a string into hell to help him. So Buddha lowered the string to the man, who then grabbed it and began to climb up out of hell on it. Other people in hell saw what was happening, and they became very excited and grabbed the string and began to climb out with him. The man, however, when he saw everybody grabbing onto the back of the string and climbing out with him, began to fear that the string would break. So he started to kick and push them off the string. But Buddha, realizing that the man was still way too self-centered, sadly let go of the string and everyone fell back into hell. In Japan, Avalokiteshvara is known as Kanzeon, one who hears the cries of the world. He or she, as he can appear as both, is affectionately known as Kannon-san. And there's a belief in Japan that Kannon-san exists in all of the 6 realms, in all existences, as human life, animal life, insect life, monster life, fighting god life, demon life, and in other words, exists in all existences. So for every kind of being that exists, there is a Kannon-san that exists in their midst as well. He or she appears in every world where needed to wake up life and help others in all the realms find their way eventually to the human realm, which is where they can break the chain of habitual actions in the 6 realms. Being born in the human realm is very rare and should be treasured as such, so it is said. And that's why suicide is considered to be such a tragic waste. So if you meet someone from the demon realm, take a moment to be sure it's not Kannon-san that you're running from. At the end of the Lotus Sutra, there is a chapter dedicated to Avalokiteshvara. He or she doesn't appear as a beautiful god or goddess to suffering beings in all the realms, but appears instead as the suffering beings themselves. Whoever calls on Avalokiteshvara for help, he or she will appear in that form to help them. In the first story of Buddha and the string into hell, you probably identified with the man who was climbing out of hell and felt the frustration as someone who was thwarting their very human instinct to survive first. There's no judgment on humans behaving as fallible humans, but the judgment is on ignoring humanity's greater promise, which is Buddha nature. But the Buddha is who you are, as well as the ones climbing the string to save themselves. The Buddha, you as you really are, understood very well that all the beings in hell are children of Buddha, including the man who did only one good deed in his life. No matter how wickedly one behaves, everyone has Buddha nature at the core of their being. One touch with your indestructible, inexpressible being and all that you possess can become accessible to you. But to do that, you have to go inward, and you cannot access your treasures until you are ready to receive them and use them for the good of all. They cannot be used for the good of one small self alone. We must embrace our whole nature, that is, everyone. In the second story, Kannon-san takes any image necessary to help, whatever form is called for. So if we judge harshly anyone of bad appearance, we judge ourselves as well as Buddha in a harsh manner, because all beings in our world are the offspring of our thoughts, our actions, and our speech. They are the progeny of our speech. They are the progeny of our thoughts and the actions we take. Their enlightenment is our enlightenment. So we work as one, and if we reclaim our own enlightened being, all beings become enlightened as well. We are one being. Suzuki Roshi said, "When we bow, the whole world bows." How lucky we are to have someone who told us the truth, no matter how bitter it was. The truth that we made this busy place we live in, and that everyone else, wicked and worthy, matters the same as we do. We are an indestructible being, a diamond being, working to understand ourselves from the beginning of awareness, working to understand the world we live in from our own direct experience of it, and through ignorant, habitual behavior, we end up making our way through the 6 realms. In the center of the 6 realms are 3 animals: a pig, which symbolizes greed and craving, a rooster, which symbolizes hate and revulsion, and a snake, which symbolizes delusion and indifference. The 3 forms of ignorance power the turning of the wheel of the 6 realms. The turning is powered only by our greed, hate, and delusion. It is what binds us to the wheel, and is what binds the wheels turning. And the energy of our ignorance is enormous, so it ties us totally through habitual action. Recently, I saw a small video of a rat running on a platter-like toy. The platter was only powered by the rat's energy. When the rat ran fast, the platter spun faster and slowed when the rat slowed. The rat usually chose to run fast, and eventually he gets thrown off the wheel, off the platter. The platter only turns with the rat's own energy. And you could say that's like us in our ordinary lives. We power the turning of the 6 realms only with greed, hate, and delusion. We imprison ourselves with our own ignorant energy. And the redemption of even the most wicked human being is within one's own nature, one's indestructible nature, which is always present and always accessible. But to reclaim our true selves, we have to reside fully in the present. To be other is to avoid the real situation. That is where our indestructible being, our diamond bright being, us, as we really are, actually abides. So we begin our practice by sitting on a cushion in the present, bringing our thoughts into the present to join with our body to solve our problems, body and mind together as one. Body and mind take much more time to solve a dilemma than thought alone. With a combination of mind and body acting together to solve problems, we also call on our present indestructible Buddha nature to help. To begin with, we call on Kannon-san, who hears the sorrows and suffering of the world. We call on Manjushri Bodhisattva, who cuts through our ignorance. And we call on Samantabhadra Bodhisattva, who understands the enlightened activity and Buddha activity of the world that is always happening, always going on. We call on our whole enlightened being until we understand all of us as we are. And I want to read one small thing here about Tathagata Garbha, which is the doctrine of the Tathagata as the diamond bright being, the indestructible being that we all are. And this is from the internet, but it's the same information. It says, The Tathagata Garbha doctrine, the word for the Buddha is called Tathagata. Tathagata Garbha, and Tathagata Garbha means the womb of the Tathagata. Doctrine is closely related to the notion of Buddha nature. Indeed, the Mahayana Mahaparinirvana Sutra, which is the lengthiest sutra dealing with the eminent and transcendent presence of the Tathagata Garbha within all beings, the term Buddha nature or Buddha Dhatu and Tathagata Garbha are presented as essentially synonymous. As opposed to the fictitious self, which is comprised of the five skandhas, the impermanent mental and physical constituents of an unawakened being. The Tathagata Garbha is indicated by the relevant sutras: ultimate, pure, ungraspable, irreducible, invulnerable, true, and deathless. The quintessence of the Buddha's liberating reality. This is the very core of its highest being, the Dharmakaya. And the Tathagata Garbha is, according to the final sutra teachings of the Mahayana Nirvana Sutra, the hidden interior Buddha self. Okay, so that's all I wanted to just think up and show that the sutras you can study. There are several sutras dealing with just about the Tathagata Garbha doctrine, or what it means to be an indestructible being. And that all beings have this indestructible quality within us, but most of us don't access any of it because we're only living on the surface with this self that we've constructed and feel quite comfortable with, whether we like us or not. So, anybody have any questions? Oh, Matt, what would you like?
Yeah. From a practical standpoint, when as significant as I think it is to study this as all of this and to practice it as part of a tradition, like Buddhism, when I hear about something like Tathagata Garbha and the quotes from the miscellaneous sutras, this particular sutra today that you offered, to me it comes out as just a collection of words and of no practical value. I'm here to address my suffering, and I'm kind of, I like Joko Beck very much because of the everyday approach to Zen that she has in her writings. And I like both of you very much when you're speaking and teaching from those perspectives, from that kind of approach, which I think you do more often these days than you used to. But when we start getting into the kind of thing that you just discussed, for me, it just, I stop listening. It closes my ears, and I think it's problematic. I just wanted to make that statement.
Yeah, Matt, the reason I read this at the end was because of the sutra names, and I thought if anybody wants to look into this and study it, it would be a good way to read about it, is to look at these particular sutras. And not that everything has to do with the suffering in this world. In fact, nothing I said today was not about that. It's just that we have to face the part of us that is really able to deal with our suffering, and not with the superficial part, which is to get rid of the suffering, but to understand what it is and what's in the back of it and what's powering it. And then to understand it in the rest of our life. So it's not a question of turning away from something. It's more like you listen if you like what's being said, and you turn your mind off if you don't want to hear it. But I suggest that maybe it would be helpful if you opened your mind to other ways of looking at your suffering than what you feel is the only way that will help you in your suffering. Mike, sorry.
You just insulted one of us.
Is that all? I thought I've insulted everybody today.
Oh, we did a good job. No. When I was listening to your talk about the Diamond Heart Center, a thought came to mind that our essence is what some people identify as a soul, but that's just, a series of words. But the other thought I had was that when we are just sitting and we're meditating, we don't form opinions about something. And when we're forming opinions, we're not in the moment, because to form an opinion, you have to step out of the moment and say, okay, I don't like this, or I like this, or whatever. And I'm not talking about what Matt said, but I was just talking about the general world. That when we are in the moment and meditating, sitting on our cushions and stuff, we don't have the concept of evil or good or I like or I don't like. We're just there. And when you're just there, there's no judgment, because you're just experiencing what's going on and you react accordingly and things like this. And when you talk, I can't remember exactly the term about the Diamond Center that we have, is that kind of reflective of the idea that when we're in the moment, we are what we essentially are in as Buddha nature. And we only forget Buddha nature because we start thinking and conceptualizing and judging and comparing and all this stuff. And that's where we lose our sense of Buddha nature. Am I even close?
Yeah, you are, because actually when we're talking about Buddha nature, we're using a word to try to describe what is not describable. And it's referring, I think, to the sense of extreme clarity that we have an ability of. And it's at the core of our being, no matter how confused we are. There is this very clear-minded, clear awareness that we have that does not cover anything. And it allows whatever is there to enter and to be part of us. And that allowing everything to be a part of us is, I think, what is referred to. And it's also an indestructible being. It's what we fall on ourselves always when we're down to the bottom of the pit, as it were, and we can't get out. That's the quality which lifts us out. Everybody has this ability to lift themselves out of destructive behavior or unhappy behavior or suffering, physical suffering, anything. This quality we have of this extreme clarity helps us to wake up to what is actually happening in our life. And much of our suffering has to do with the fact that most of the time we don't see what is really happening in our life. Even though it's right in front of us, it's like we don't absorb what's going on. We just cover it over because we're only dealing with a very surface person, a very surface event, and not seeing the Buddha activity that is going on underneath all the time, every moment. So
it's like our essence, for lack of a better word, but that core thing is easily covered up because we're busy thinking about the future, the past, dislikes, likes, concepts, interpretations, all this stuff. And when we just, for English is so useless with Zen, but we just are what we are. Suchness, I guess. That becomes more prevalent in our lives because we're no longer blocking it with our distractions and everything like that.
Yeah.
And So is that, kind of tie in with what you were saying?
Yes, very much so. That the thusness is exactly where we are when we're sitting exactly in the present moment, and we touch all of our person when we're in the moment. That's why when we sit in meditation, we have this feeling of calmness, whether we have any reason for it or not, or we feel some togetherness in our being that wasn't there before. And when you walk out, even when you're upset about things and not working right for you, etc., you still have a feeling slowly as you sit to getting yourself together in a way that you can't do just thinking and just trying to follow some system of, oh, I just have to eat this food and I'll be happy and my body will be working better, and if my body works better, my mind will. And I mean, maybe that does happen sometimes, but I don't think it's the. I think it's this indestructible part of us at the center of our person. I don't even know if I'd call it a center, but I would say that it's there, and we can call on it whenever we get really stuck. And it's that quality which lifts people out of really dark times when they stop hanging on to them.
Thank you.
That quality of thusness, yeah. Jeff, it's good to see you.
Hi, it's good to see everybody. So I think Mike kind of asked my question, or you kind of answered this question, but I was really interesting. He said, talking about mind and body coming together to solve problems. Can you talk more about what you mean by that? I think you might have just kind of answered it. But I think I know what that means in a certain aspect. I was wondering if you could talk more about that a little bit.
Okay, when body and mind come together to work, it's like you're a whole person, and when it's not, you're usually only half a person trying to use your energies and trying to make do without the real potent quality of your life, which is your physical life. And you can get by on emotions and you can get by on thinking, but you can't get by without the wholehearted help of your physical body. And so when you connect the both together, you have a quality of really being present. And when you're really present, when you're really here, that quality that Mike was mentioning, the thusness of people, just nothing more than as they are at that moment, nothing more. But everything comes together in that one moment. Everything does. And usually we're scattered all over. Usually either our mind's scattered, our emotions are scattered, and our mind isn't connected to our body, except, just briefly. But when we sit, we bring everything together. It's like taking two pipes and joining them together, whereas before the energy couldn't run through because they're separated. They're like focusing in different directions. And you bring them together, it's like you open the door to all this incredible energy inside. And it can come through when you do that. So it's just like bringing all of your abilities in the present instead of just, breaking you up into parts and expecting the parts to have all the same power that you would have if you were together. Matt.
Yeah, could you discuss how acceptance would work into all of this?
Well, acceptance is you stop fighting your reality and you really accept it. The problem is your body has to accept too, as well as your mind. You have to all accept it, all of you together has to accept it. So at one day you may feel accepting and the next day you may resist. And so you make peace with all the parts of yourself every day. And when you do that, you're working towards acceptance. And when you really work towards acceptance like that by keeping body and mind and emotions all from getting lost in negativity, then if you keep that going, at some point your whole body and mind will accept, just really accept. And when that happens, doesn't mean that things get easier. It's just that you skim over them instead of having them crawl all over you. you sit on the top of them and immerse yourself in the suffering, but not in a negative way. You take the energy out of the suffering because you understand that even suffering is energy, and you can take your own suffering out of it and turn it back into what it really is, which is vital energy.
Would you say that when, okay, for body to begin to accept, would you say that the process of meditation and how it sensitizes us to our body it feeds into our ability to accept bodily and not just mentally?
I'm sorry, would you say that
Yeah,
once
right.
more?
That went by me too.
All right, let me restate that. Okay. With regards to acceptance, not just being something mental, but physical as well. And for that to happen, I know that with my thoughts and emotions, that sitting has helped me, sensitized me to how it's all connected. And whereas before I began to sit, you know, the suffering that I would experience that was mental, just thinking, I did not understand that the pain was actually physical. And I just wasn't attentive to that. And so I know that with meditation, that's helped me very much to recognize that it's all tied in together. And so when I intellectually accept something, it may just be entirely thought-based without being linked to the body. I don't know. I'm running in circles.
Matt, it's being acceptance of what you're experiencing is more like a surrender. It's not just accepting anything. It's saying you understand there is a reason, and the karma that's in the body is one of them. But then there's this other thing. This Buddha activity takes place in all of our lives all the time, and most of us don't see it at all. And we miss it most of the time because we usually aren't paying attention. But the surrender to the bigger picture is the acceptance, the real acceptance that goes beyond body and mind. It's saying, you know, that there is a bigger activity going on, and okay, I'm okay with it. It's that kind of surrender where you don't want to be the pebble or the boulder in the stream blocking the water. You want everything to flow smoothly, and you do that by saying, okay, I surrender to this activity taking place, whatever it is. I'll trust not only in Buddha, nature, which is mind, I'll trust my small mind judgment too, and just stay with it. And I think that kind of surrender is what real acceptance is. Okay.
Anyone else?
Okay. Anyone else? Mike?
To throw in my 10 cents worth, as I deal with my medical problems as they get worse, I don't look at surrender as a sign of weakness or not caring. I look at surrender as just, you can't do anything about it. You have to accept it, and you have to move on with your life and continue whatever you're doing. And I'm hoping that's a correct interpretation of what you're saying, because that's what helps me get through bad days. It's just like, this is the way it is. There's nothing I can do about it. I keep functioning. If I stress about it, then I'm of course thinking, well, I missed the days when I wasn't feeling like this, and that's not going to do any good. You just work with what you got. And sometimes I think that's what meditation does, is it puts me right back in the center, right back in my core. And I pretend that I've always been like this. And so I don't sit there and regret or worry about the future or regret the past or something. And I don't know if that's along the same lines, but it's like, it's how I've gotten through a lot of the stuff I'm dealing with, is because I just sit there and go, okay, I can still do this. All right. I can't do that anymore. All right. And I think maybe, is that along the lines of what you're discussing with suffering? Is that you just acceptance?
That's along the lines of it. Actually, when I was in my early teens, we lived in a place, my family lived on a place of the Virginia shore on the ocean. And so when we'd go swimming in the ocean all the time, there were like 5 of us, and we'd all go in the water. And my father would say, if there's a riptide in this area, very big riptides. And so when you go out and you feel this, the riptide is under the surface. So the surface moves into the shore, but the riptide pulls you out, just the opposite. So if you're not paying attention, you could find yourself way out beyond the wave breaking area and find yourself in dangerous waters. And so he would say, if when you feel yourself being pulled by this riptide underneath, don't fight it, because the more you fight it, the faster it pulls you out. So he would tell us what we should do is just to relax, give into the ocean, as it were, and float to the surface of the ocean. Don't fight underneath, just float up to the surface. And the current, the regular current of the ocean, was to move into the shore. So when we would relax and just stop fighting and just float to the surface, then the ocean would just bring you right back to the shore as fast as you went out. So that's how we would always, when we were swimming, that's what we would do. And there was a lot of riptides in that area, in Mamio, Virginia, or North Carolina, all that area. So we had to be really careful swimming in the ocean like that. So that was one of the things. And that's the kind of surrender I'm talking about, is surrendering to the bigger flow, not the small-minded flow, or the flow of wanting something and trying to do something, but to surrender and understand that you have a bigger judger of your activity than your small mind. And that ability to see the bigger picture allows you to float in through the top of the problems and not be carried away by greed, ignorance, or something else, which is like the riptide grabbing you when you didn't mean to. Peter, would you like to say something at this point?
No.
He grew up in the same type of area where
Come on, Peter.
on the ocean. He grew up on the ocean too.
Yeah, no, actually not quite, but but anyway, we didn't have any riptides. No.
He was in Connecticut.
I was in Long Island Sound.
No, this
But
was
anyway, let me say something about the our body and mind. Because slowly, ever so slowly, in a certain sense, you're during your meditation, you sense tension in a certain part of your body that can go on for underneath the current, well, not necessarily riptide, but underneath everything, and slowly, ultimately, your whole body will be meditating. Not just your breath, not just your back, not just your neck, but right, the whole thing will be meditating. And it's from that point that things begin to make sense. I think that's helpful.
No, that's very helpful. It's the point is that sitting does make a big difference, but it's not the difference we always think it's going to be when we start sitting. We're looking for something back always, and you do get something back, but not the way you think it comes back to you. Something much bigger than your small self comes back, as it were, wakes up to, and you start to understand that your body and mind working together is the only way in the present. It's the only way to make that happen. So no matter what you do when you're sitting, try to keep yourself in the present, because that's where it all happens. That's where it takes place.
Anybody else today? Yes, Sandy? Pardon me.
Sandy?
Gotta turn my sound on. Um, when you were talking about the body and mind and speech, and I remember I'd had a really bad relationship breakup, and not only was it mental anguish, but it was physical anguish as well. You know, you feel it in your heart, you feel it in your stomach, you feel it throughout your whole body. And it does bring a sense of that they're tied together. That if not only is the mind feeling pain, but possibly causing it, but the body is also feeling it. So they are tied together. But that, in a sense, also opens up the fact that you don't have to suffer like this, because you come to realize while you're practicing that mind is creating all this pain that's now coming out in your body. And it really helped me, because it allowed me to get over a bad relationship. And even just other types of discomfort and pain that comes up, you know, you start to feel it, and you not only think it, you start to feel it. So as you become more aware, your ability to let these thoughts go becomes more prevalent, and you can let the painful thoughts go. And, you know, you realize, why am I focusing on this? There's a lot more wonderful things I can think about, things I can do that I enjoy, that aren't going to keep me in this misery all day. So I think sitting gives us, you know, that insight into the control we have, where before we sat, we had no control. We didn't see the connection between body, speech, and mind. But as the longer we sit, the more we see it, the more we can control it, and the more we can live in the moment, I believe, and not be caught up in the delusion of the pain or the past. That's my 3 cents.
Thank you, Sandy.
Good stuff.
Are there any more questions?
Yeah, it's time just to, because we had the full moon ceremony,